Good morning. Welcome to this edition of the Lynne Hayes Freeland Show. Now that we're doing these Zoom shows, one thing I realized when I watched the show last week, I felt like I shout when we do these shows. So I'm going to bring it down a level, but I get so excited, especially when I have a guest that I feel like we have so much to talk about. We have to bring her back the next week. Dr. Kimberly Ellis is back with us again. Your story last week about Tulsa was so awesome, so amazing. And I wanted you to come back because I felt like we left part of the conversation about Tulsa on the table, and we never even got to Juneteenth.
Yes, there's so much to cover. And thank you so much for having me back, Lynne Hayes Freeland. You know, we really enjoy your show as always. So, we'll start off with Juneteenth because that's, and what I noticed about Juneteenth is, and that's been circling the internet, and since we've had the celebration already, is that there's a really predominant myth that I mentioned it before when we talked, but I think on the radio, not on television with you. And that is that there's a persistent myth that the reason why Juneteenth exists is because for 2 years, those who were enslaved in Texas did not know that they were free until June 19th, 1865. That is completely and entirely false. That is not what happened. And it's really important for us to understand this history because it really ties back to what we owe the U.S. colored troops for saving the nation, saving the Union, and saving the Republic. So let's go back really, really quickly. What really has happened is that those who were enslaved in Texas, which we know was a Confederate state, Abraham Lincoln freed all of those who were enslaved in all Confederate states in 1863. It was a war tactic. So even for Abraham Lincoln, it wasn't an overwhelming moral issue for him. He knew that the so-called United States of America could not be saved without actually freeing all of those who were enslaved and starting with those who were in the Confederate States. All right, so it was to cause disruption. It was to make sure that those who were trying to run away could run away. It was an economic choice to undermine the Confederacy. Well, guess what? The Confederacy fought back. It's not as though those who were enslaved in Confederate states just remained ignorant. No, they were actually terrorized by Confederate armies, by slave owners, by random whites, etc. And so you actually had the colored troops who, 1,800 of them, who joined the Union Army, who fought very hard and are the reason why we actually even have the United States today. And so the 3 battles leading up to Juneteenth that they're responsible for and that are really significant in American history is 1, they took Charleston, South Carolina. Very important. 2, they took Richmond, Virginia, another Confederate stronghold. 3, they took Galveston, Texas, 4 days before and creating the space for U.S. Major General Granger to come and then declare with Union troops to say, you are officially free here in Texas, June 19th, 1865. Because honestly, as we know, you do not have freedom. You can't just free someone on paper. You actually enforce the law. It is U.S. colored troops that are responsible for winning the war, for saving the Republic, and quite frankly, it goes deep here, Lynne Hayes Freeland. They're responsible for Juneteenth. They're responsible for Memorial Day. That's why African Americans created Memorial Day to honor. It started off honoring the Civil War troops who lost their lives. And Abraham Lincoln said so even after the war was over. He said that the war could not have been won without the U.S. colored troops and freeing those who were enslaved. And that's why he took it one step further and said, well, absolutely, when it comes to the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, right? That yes, they should have citizenship. I mean, that's obvious. And yes, they should have voting rights. And when he said that, literally his assassin was in the audience and heard him and said, that's going to be one of the last days this man stays alive. That is why Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. So when we're telling the story of Juneteenth, we're really telling a fully American story. And so we saw that Senators Kamala Harris and Cory Booker issued a bill to create Juneteenth as a national holiday. It should absolutely be a national holiday. And honestly, it is the holiday that represents true America. It's really the best of America. July 4th is the beginning process of America. But even the founding fathers knew, they wrote it around in discussions of the Declaration of Independence. They wrote it in the rough draft of the Declarations of Independence. And as a historian and a scholar, I have read multiple drafts of the Declaration of Independence. But even Thomas Jefferson said that if he knew that America would be, as he thought, cursed and would feel the wrath of God if America did not at some point abolish slavery. He didn't have the moral, courage and perhaps the might to do it. Many of the founding fathers, the reason why they created, constitutional amendments and room to refine America is because they could not resolve that inherent contradiction between saying that all men are created free,
right,
and also own slaves. So July 4th is the beginning of a celebrations of America, but Juneteenth is the actual realization of the American concept.
Full circle. We got to take a break, but you know what? You now have corrected me, because on the radio, I argued that I wasn't convinced that Juneteenth should be a national holiday. So you've now righted me on that position. We'll take a commercial break. We have a lot more to do today on the show. Don't go away.